Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Still Positive. My name is Dana Marie and I am your host today and always. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm coming back from a weekend of comedy. I do stand-up comedy on the side. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I do a little stand-up here and there. I have had a show last weekend that went not so great. But you know what? That's the risk you take with doing some stand up and talking about your life when it consists of, oh, I don't know, chronic cancer. And it's always interesting to go into crowds where people are unsuspecting of what you're going to say, you know, oh, she's just going to talk about being vegan or something like that. But instead, I just talk about my life, which is cancer. And not everyone loves it. You know, I make it fun, but you know, it's a tough subject and I want to get through this boundary with a lot of people. So that's why I keep doing it. And I'm not going to stop talking about cancer. So if you want to see me live in action and you're around the Hudson Valley area on May 21st, be sure to come down to Village Billiards and I will be there around 8 p.m. saying some comedy stuff. And then if you're not available on the 21st of May, hey, don't worry, because I'll be around on the 27th of May, and I will be in Suffern, New York, and I'll be doing a show at Diddy's Soul Food Lounge. So, hey, great food, great comics. Come by, check it out, and have some laughs if you're around. If not, I totally understand. I'll catch you at the next one, because hopefully we're going to take this on the road. Anyway, so today I'm talking to Sarah, who also has some chronic issues of her own. She has chronic migraine as well as chronic endometriosis, which is a combination I don't wish on anyone. I'm sorry that Sarah has to deal with this, but also I think that it's so rad what she does while having these chronic conditions. And I really am excited for you to learn more about her, about chronic migraines as well, and try to wrap your head around the fact that there are millions of people out there who are living every single day with a migraine. And then I want you to be super nice to those people that you don't know, because as we all know, everyone is going through their own battles in which we have no idea about. So take that little nugget and just write it on a little Pinterest board, because that's exactly what it sounded like. I can't help it. Sometimes I'm real cheesy, but you know, if life hands you lemons, here's another one. Just make lemonade. What else can I throw your way? Nothing else. I'll leave you with that one. Thank you for listening to my little spiel. And here is Sarah living with chronic migraine. I'm Dana Marie, and this is Still Positive. Let's be real. People love to gloss over chronic conditions or disabilities with a fleeting comment like, just be positive, or a fleeting insult like, kale will cure you, as if your life was that easy of a fix. This is a podcast for when you face a different reality, knowing that positivity isn't a magic wand that's going to cure everything, but a flashlight in the dark that we may or may not have batteries to. Living with a chronic illness or disability makes you feel different, and your difference could be noticeable to others or not, but either can sometimes make you feel invisible. I'm here to tell you that your experience is valid and shared by others in the dark. Positivity is not a missing puzzle piece that's going to solve your life's puzzle, but it can be a beautiful tool that can help you grow, and sharing those experiences can make us grow together. Sarah, thank you so much for jumping on to the call and talking to us at Still Positive. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing good today. I was not doing so great earlier this morning with chronic migraine, at least in my case. Mornings are really difficult. I feel like the pain from the night, just while I'm trying to sleep, it lets me sleep, but then I'm met with like just a bunch of stuff in the morning that just makes it hard to get out of bed and wake up. Because you're just sitting there in pain as the first thing that greets you instead of like the birds chirping or the morning sun. And it's like pain. And it's like, oh no, not you again.
Oh my
But
God.
I'm doing much better now that I've, gotten up. I have my medicine, and I'm ready to, seize the day.
Nice. Yeah, so you have chronic migraines and you also have endometriosis.
Yes. So I actually got the endometriosis diagnosis like after I got my chronic migraine diagnosis, but I had been living with endometriosis symptoms far longer than when I was living with migraine. I believe my first like migraine attack was in 2013. And for endometriosis, like from as far back as I can remember, with the heavy periods and the extremely painful periods, I've had that probably since I was about 13, 14, or 15. Um,
Wow.
and I'm in my 30s now. So that's a long time to be living with pain. And it wasn't until 2016 when I finally like around 2015 doctors finally like listened to me and like weren't just gaslighting me and saying, "Oh, this is how your period is supposed to look and act and be treated."
And that is such like a common story for people with endometriosis, I feel like. I think that there should be a better specialist for gynecologists. Like, I'm not trying to have a baby, but I do want to like check out what's going on down there in a different way.
Right, right. And especially if, you're constantly being told by other doctors, this is normal, like you're supposed to bleed this much, or yes, you're supposed to have, this pain with periods. Whenever I would go in and tell them, they would just say it's normal. And it wasn't until I finally went to see a woman of color, OBGYN, when she was listening to all my symptoms, she was taking notes and she was like, and how long have you dealt with this? And, we need to get in there. We need to figure out like what is going on. And we need to, I believe you. You could have a symptom called endometriosis. And it was a Facebook friend that I had went to high school with had like first posted about it. And all of a sudden I was like, what the heck is endometriosis? Like, what does it do? And I started doing all this research and seeing that it's a pretty brutal disease and everything like ticked off in my head that, yeah, this is what it sounds like. And so many women, non-binary people are misdiagnosed or just not diagnosed at all to get treated. So it is a huge issue. It is nice to, like, I am hearing about it more in the media. A lot more celebrities have come through it. I believe uh, Tia or Tamara has come out and said that she has endometriosis, and I believe Halsey also lives with endometriosis. So
Wow.
it's weird, like hearing celebrities talk about a condition that you live with, and knowing that like you're not alone.
Mhm.
And the same thing with chronic migraine. When Serena Williams came out and said that she lives with migraine, and I'm like, how the heck do you play tennis with a migraine? Like
Yeah,
the poor, like
seriously.
and I say that, and I don't give not only myself, but like us enough credit as people who live with chronic pain and chronic illnesses. How do we do a lot of the stuff that we do in chronic pain? Like it's pretty, I don't want to use the word remarkable, but we're pretty like darn strong to do so much of the things that, a lot of people do pain free.
Yes, exactly. And still have complaints about when they're doing it pain free.
Exactly. I make a joke sometimes when I like get like regular people sick, where I'm like, you know what? I'll take regular people sick over any migraine attack or endometriosis flare because it hits differently,
Yeah.
And then when you're real people sick on top of a flare, oh no, don't even go there.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't even know how to start addressing this. Like, where do I go from here? So, you've had chronic migraines since 2013. And so, was that first attack, was it a long amount of time? Like, how long do your migraines usually last, I guess? And are they always the same intensity every time?
No, that's a really, really good question. And the answer is they're not always the same. In the very beginning, when I was not chronic, so when I first was diagnosed with migraine, they were happening. The very first attack lasted, I want to say 5 hours, and the only way that I could relieve myself from it was by like just going to sleep. So it actually occurred in the middle of, during Halloween, they have those haunted corn mazes. I was with my girlfriend and a couple of our friends, and we're standing in line and it was cold out. And like all of a sudden, like I just started getting this stabbing, shooting pain. And I started to get what I now know was nauseous and very light and sound sensitive. And I'm like looking around to the other people in my group and I'm like, anybody else feel this? Like, am I like what's I was scared and they were all like, no, no. And I was like, maybe I ate something bad. That is like the first thought because, we had all eaten together, but maybe something just wasn't agreeing with my body because I could not think what is causing this pain. And as the night went on, it just got worse and worse. And the noises got louder and the lights got brighter. And like the stabbing, shooting pain in my head just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And that night, like I think I went to bed like pretty early and I woke up the next day and like I still had some remnants of it. And I was like, this is weird. Like I never had a headache like this. I at the time I didn't know what I was having was a migraine. Um, I had went from a doctors to doctors and, saying, oh, well, it sounds like you're just really stressed, or it sounds like you're working too much. Why don't you like take it back at work? And like, what do you mean take it back at work? Like I need to work to pay my bills to pay you.
Right, exactly.
um, and so in the beginning, it was about, I would have like 5 attacks a month. And back then, like I thought that was the worst. Like I was like, oh gosh, this is horrible. 5 migraine attacks a month. But now I'm chronic. I have chronic migraine. So I wake up almost every single day with a migraine attack. And so going from 5 attacks randomly that happen in the middle of the day, in the morning or at night, to then waking up, almost 20 to 25 times a month with a migraine attack is worse. And they'll the things that have changed because I'm on different treatments now is at least the ones that I do wake up with, they're not as debilitating. I'll get maybe 3 to 4 debilitating attacks a month where maybe I can't see out of my right eye. I'll get extremely dizzy, extremely nauseated, um, stabbing, shooting pain from the back of my head to like the front up near my nose. The pressure will just feel like, imagine like your head's like in a rice cooker, and then there's like one of those like sledgehammers going, and
Wow.
then something's just cranking your brain. Like
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
hard to describe like the pain that comes with a migraine attack, and you can't think, you can't focus. Like I'll try to do what I'm doing, but it makes it so difficult um to get through.
So in the ones in the morning now, how long are they lasting for now that you are chronic with migraines?
If I catch it early enough in the day, like if I wake up with like the pain and I'm able to get to my medication early enough, they can last anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. If I don't take anything, it can be 5 to 6.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it's remedied with just moving, just drinking more water, moving around, but most of the time that doesn't work. And I will like it'll dull down, but it won't go away. So I'll get better, but I'll always feel it in the back of my eye. So sometimes it can last all day. If I get my medicine and treat it early, it can sometimes disappear within 3 to 4 hours.
Wow, that is so annoying. I would hate that so much. I'm sorry that that's your reality. What do your doctors say about um like a cure for this, or like what do they say? Is it just like pain management from here on out?
Right. So when I became chronic, I had bounced around from different doctor to doctors. One doctor had told me, "Oh, you're getting better," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. Like, I'm actually getting much worse. Like,
I
how
feel
is
this
this a
way, yeah.
thing?" And she had written it down in my treatment notes too that I was getting better, and I was like, "Do you not listen at all in the appointments?" So I had to switch doctors because I wasn't getting listened to when it started to go from 10 to 15 to then 25 migraine attacks a month. Like I was struggling. I was
Yeah.
struggling a lot. And I now see this wonderful headache specialist and neurologist in Philadelphia. I live in New Jersey, so I drive about over an hour to see her.
Mhm.
She's a Black neurologist. So like that was like a level of comfort that I had. And we now are on like a treatment plan to where we've taken the edge off of a lot of the migraine attacks. Like I maybe have 4 to 5 severe migraine attacks a month. And then everything else I can work through. I put them on like a pain level scale. So
Mm-hmm.
migraine attack I have one right now, is like a 2, and I'm able to work through it. And it's because I took my medicine this morning, and I can think, I can focus. Maybe I'm a little bit more tired, but I don't have the nausea. I don't have this sharp stabbing, shooting pain. I have like a little bit of like, feels like there's something in my eye, but it's not penetrating. So that's a huge relief for me. I'm able to function like that. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of migraine sufferers push through a lot of pain and, are doing that. But with back to my doctor, we're on a plan now. There was a newer migraine drug that came out, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to say like drug names, so I'm just gonna skip over it. But there was a new migraine drug that came out that she was like, "You're a perfect candidate for this drug. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Yes, please," because I was at that point where I was doing like the attacks were getting worse, and I didn't want to go back to something that happened within my care. Was when a few years, like 3 maybe 4 years ago, I had lost my job. And what happens when you lose your job, for most jobs there's health insurance tied to it. I also lost my health insurance, and I tried to get a plan in between that would let me still see the same doctors, but the plan like kicked me out of a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff. And so I didn't get treatment for my migraines for almost a year and a half when I was on unemployment. And so that like break is actually what made took me from 10 migraine attacks a month to 25, because I wasn't getting treatment. And so anytime I hear of something new or that's going to help, I'm going to try it, because I'm trying to get back to that level. And I think I'm almost there with this new migraine treatment that's out. I had my first 6 days in a row where I was migraine free. And I can't remember the last time I was migraine free for that long of a streak. Like I'll have like 5 days here, but they're not all together. And I was just in awe. I was like, they exist. Like I feel like I
Yeah.
had just like won the lottery of being like, oh, this is what it's like to not be in pain. This is what it's like to, not feel extremely like uh, a stage of migraine. There's a bunch of stages. There's a stage after you have the attack that's called postdrome, where it's basically like you feel like you're hungover, but like without like any of the drinking. So like there's nothing fun that comes in at you. The day before you were migraining, and then the next day you're just extremely lethargic. Like it's hard to focus. You get brain fog a lot.
Mm.
And I didn't have that for 6 days. And not having brain fog, not having pain, not having nausea was euphoric.
Yeah.
So I am on a better treatment plan now, and so there is hope. There's been a lot of new treatments that have come out for people living with migraine. One of the one caveat I do have to say is that health insurance does not make that easy, and that is something that we do like we bring to light at my job too, is talking about the different barriers and issues and that patients have getting access to treatments. And
Mm.
I work here, we have good insurance. I still ran into that with my job, and it's the newer migraine medications that are coming out. The health insurance companies don't want to cover them, and
Mm-hmm.
why is beyond me.
Oh my gosh. So you're working at Global Healthy Living Foundation. It's
Yes,
nice.
we
And
are a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
when did you start working there?
I started working there last June. It's appropriate. It was Pride Month, and it was Migraine Awareness Month. So I got to like come into like a job during two of my favorite months, which was pretty awesome. And a lot of the work that we do is like very focused on patient advocacy, patient education, patient-centered care. It's just a great resource for people looking for information, trying to find community, trying to navigate what can be a very scary part of their life when COVID's going on, and seeing how that interacts with getting their access to their treatments, getting going to see doctors. How does the vaccine react with people who have rheumatic conditions? So we're a great resource for people looking for that information, and then they're able to take that information and make educated decisions on when they go back to their healthcare providers.
Because it's for all people with chronic illness, right?
Right. We cover a bunch of different conditions. I know the main four are arthritis, IBD, migraine, and psoriasis, but we're always expanding and we don't really shy away from, if we're working on a patient story, if somebody has cancer or somebody has um, heart disease, we also talk about those conditions as well.
And I love that it's an advocacy that really brings to light the insurance because it's like that I feel is lacking in a lot of the advocacy. I feel like a lot of it is awareness, which is always important. But I think that sometimes there is already awareness and there's other issues like getting to treatments. I think that that's starting to pick up too. People not being able to get to their treatments or not being able to get proper care from their treatments after they've had it. And I think that those are starting to be more elevated. But the insurance, I think that is the next huge hurdle that we have as chronic illness patients and disability patients. Like the health insurance is absolutely absurd. And while I know that like we're lucky to have insurance and we're lucky to have like great care, it's also a huge cost that can put people in bankruptcy so easily. You're just trying to live your life.
Exactly. At the end of the day, people are just trying to live their lives and trying to get access to better treatment, better care. And insurance is just, I always call insurance my mortal enemy. Car insurance, health insurance, they are just, always, and it shouldn't be this difficult. It shouldn't be. And for me, the thing that really is aggravating is most times doctors will tell insurance this is the treatment that we are recommending for our patients to have, and it'll get sent over to insurance and insurance would be like, no, let's go with something else that's cheaper, or let's or they'll just deny it. And
Mhm.
then that back and forth time that is spent appealing, when with the doctor who needs that time to be spent with meeting with their patients. Like it's the system is just so congested with appeals and step therapy, and the patients and the doctors aren't getting that time anymore to connect. And once I got into this role, I started to see a lot of the barriers of the behind the scenes of what's going on. And it's something has to change, and that's what we're trying that we do. We have a whole advocacy and policy team that helps you know fight against that. And we have there's a 50 state network. It's a virtual network of different patient advocates that it's free to join, free to sign up, tell your story. And if there's certain issues that are coming down the pipeline within healthcare bills, that we need patient voices on to say, hey, listen, this affects a real person. And this is why this is important. And this is why we need you to not do X, Y, and Z with this step therapy bill, or we need to repeal this. We're using real patients and real stories to help fight back against laws that are trying to really hurt patients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so important. And you guys did an event, Headache on the Hill. Was that the?
Yeah, so the Headache on the Hill was actually run by the Alliance for Headache Disorders Advocacy, and that was a big lobbying event. And it's an event that I attended very early on in my advocacy years of getting into migraine. It was the first healthcare advocacy event that I had went to, and I you meet in Washington. Normally you meet in Washington D.C., and you go and you meet with your congressional staff members that are from your state, and each year there's a few asks, and an ask is basically what you're asking your members of Congress to either fund, sign on to. This past year, the main ask was about starting healthcare centers. I'm gonna fudge this up. Um, the for basically it was about disparities within migraine, but for Indigenous and Alaskan Native communities. And what the goal was to ask to fund and start these headache centers, disorders of excellences, because these communities, they have the highest number um, of headache conditions, but are not getting treated because they have issues with transportation. There's no doctors close by, and that's a huge issue. And so these headache centers of excellences would bring that to the communities so that they don't have to, travel 4 hours to see a neurologist, to see a specialist. And this year, I wanted to see more representation at this event, and I recruited five diverse voices, five BIPOC and QT BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, and then queer, non-binary, trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color, to be at this event, which was held virtually. It's been held virtually the past 2 years. And I did this because I would often, as great as these advocacy events are, fighting for, bring for access to care, I often don't see people like me in these rooms. And it can get really lonely when you don't see people like you, and it makes you wonder, am I the only queer Black woman living with migraine? And I say this too because it's important, because representation matters. And sometimes when people look from the outside in, they may think, oh, maybe migraine only affects a certain kind of person. And in migraine, it's typically presented as a middle-aged white woman's disease. Now, we know that that's not the truth. We know that, it does not discriminate. But the way that it's been reflected in media and in healthcare textbooks, and even up until recently, commercials, that is why representation is so important. And it's important for people to see that migraine affects all kinds of people, all kinds of races, all kinds of genders, all kinds of like unfortunately, migraine loves all.
Yeah, and especially like you're saying with your own doctor's experience, like going to a doctor and not being believed because of a whole slew of things, but also because the doctors, they're only looking at the straight white male or this like straight white woman, or like these are the people that they're doing the tests on. And like that's also an issue that is being seen in a lot of clinical trials for at least cancer. I know that's basically the only people that they're looking at. That's a huge issue, and like what they're being taught at schools and what the studies are showing is just one subset of person, and that's
Mhm.
not the case at all. And like I love that this is a mission of yours, because I think that it's so important to bring this to light, and it's so important to bring this to these places, like people that are going and talking to representatives. There's not enough of that that's happening, and I want to thank you for doing that.
No, thank you. Thank you for, amplifying, my not only my journey, but like my organization and like the work that we're doing, because it's a group effort, and I can't take all the credit for what we do here. But sometimes just getting out and talking to people about what we do and how we can help people is the first step.
Yeah, and like bringing on more people like you're doing. I think that that's so cool, and like just a really great way to start branching out into like what needs to happen. So that's really cool. Do you think that there are other issues that you see with doctor patient care that you want to address in the future going forward?
I think moving forward, I want people to continue to address disparities that exist in healthcare. And specifically, we have to make the doctor-patient relationship better. So there is a lack of trust on the patient side to come in and trust their doctor, especially if it is not I've been speaking with a lot of BIPOC patients lately, and almost every single one of them said, I feel more comfortable and safer with a doctor who is either a woman of color, or, a man of color, or just somebody that, kind of looks like me. They doesn't have to even be like the same race, like it doesn't have to be the same ethnicity, but just knowing that there is some similar shared experience, they feel a lot safer. And I think both sides, like healthcare has just a long way to go to when we are talking about the patient journey and the patient experience and patient notes, and just treating it like my doctor, Dr. White, she talks about treating it like a partnership. And she talks about how it's not just one person, it's not just the patient and the doctor, and it's just the doctor telling you what to do. It's the patient coming in telling the doctor, listen, I'm afraid that this medicine does not work, and not being afraid that their doctor is going to scold them or shun them for not doing that, but then having a conversation about, okay, well, let's talk about why you're, like your concerns. And I feel like that doesn't happen a lot. I feel like the conversation is out of it, and a lot of providers are just immediately jumping to conclusions as to, well, there could be so much going on in the patient's life that they don't know about. Who knows how many buses it took for them to get there? Who knows how, have they just been unable to afford their medication as to why maybe they're not taking it? And you don't get that information if you don't have a conversation with your patient. And there has to be um that space has to be created, and that relationship has to be created with that doctor and patient. And I feel like the gaslighting just has to stop of, it's all in your head, and that can't be true, or you're too young to be experiencing this pain, like
Mm,
that stuff. I would like to do away with in 2022. And well, I'd like to do away with it years ago, but I would love patients to stop getting gaslit, because it has a huge effect on their mental health.
yes. No, I totally agree with that. What I found is that sometimes nurses, as opposed to doctors, can sit there and talk for a little bit longer. I know that like doctors, they walk in and they need like $10,000 because like their time is very valuable. So I get that. And I get that they don't always have the best bedside manner. So sometimes I go to the nurses and I try to like give them the spiel first so they can like cut it into whatever the doctor needs to hear in 50 seconds, like sometimes I feel like that helps. But I mean, it is true. Like it's just not fair that the relationship isn't always there. And it shouldn't have to be that, you have to figure out ways to talk to this person. But there's so many freaking people that are going to doctors all the time. And I wish that there was just like a buffer or like someone in between, even the nurse. Like the nurses are doing so much too. Like if there
They
was like a
are. Snap to
patient,
nurses.
so like the backbone of this freaking healthcare system is nurses, nurse practitioners. Like these are the people that are really getting in there and talking to patients and understanding their needs. But if there was even like someone in between them, like a patient advocate that would go in and like really get to like the nitty gritty, like, can you afford this medication? Like,
Hmm.
because the insurance company is not doing that, if there was like a buffer in between that to help with that. I don't know. I think that
Yeah.
that's a really good point though.
Yeah. I feel like once that relationship has been established, like I've been able to successfully do that with three of my doctors. Like that awkwardness, that like feeling like you have to just listen to like what the not I don't want this to come across one way, but like it's all the doctor's way or the highway. Like I've been able to figure that out now with my doctors, of where like if I had a procedure that was done that put me in so much pain, at an old doctor, she would say, let's try it again. And I would say, I don't feel comfortable. And then she would push it. And my new doctor, she knows that this specific treatment put me in excruciating pain, and it didn't have the positive effects to treat the migraine. So that's not something that we even bring up. Just having that, I think empathy goes such a long way
Mm-hmm.
in in healthcare. And I feel like you mentioned bedside manner, but just having that empathy, and just goes a long way, and letting people know that, listen, I don't know everything either. Like we are also, I don't want to say the experts in our care, but we're the experts living with the disease itself. Sometimes you'll find a doctor that actually has the same condition as you, and like those are like the unicorns that I always say, where they're like, oh no, I have migraine too,
Yeah.
which is my my current doctor. But sometimes it's it's I want patients to feel okay and safe and empowered when they go into that doctor's office, and they feel okay. And then something that has like been coming up a lot is, what happens if English is not your first language? I know that you can ask for a translator, but I was in a doctor's office recently, and it was on the bulletin board, but like in very, very tiny font that said like, if you require a translator, please like contact, but and it wasn't Spanish, it was in English. And I was like, well, that's not helpful.
At
If
all?
somebody needs a translator, how are they going to know? So just like there's a lot that can be changed. And I also think there's a lot to be done on both sides, and we didn't even get to like gender informed care. How do you make, queer and LGBTQIA plus patients feel safe in your offices? I think that's why a lot of them do not go to the doctor. They don't feel safe. People are going to misgender them. They're going to use the wrong pronouns. That's a topic that comes up quite frequently.
Yes, I agree with that too. And having that inclusion in the doctor's offices as well, like having that as like your doctor is also a person that is trans or, non-binary or whatever, like having that representation, I think is also important. And you can't like force force anyone to be a doctor, but it would be ideal,
Right,
if those
right.
doctors were there. Um, but yeah, that's also definitely a huge issue. Because not being believed is so detrimental. And if anyone would just be listened to, then, they would at least know that it's being worked on and they're being heard. And it's not just something that's in their head and they're going crazy, because that's the worst feeling. Like knowing that you're in pain and then knowing that it's maybe just being made up by yourself. Like that's insane.
That should not be allowed anymore. No more. I'm ruling it out.
Yeah, exactly. Here on out, it's never going to happen again. I wish it was that easy. So you talked about having treatments that you've had conversations with your doctors with, that you were saying this isn't really working for me. How long did you wait or sort of like suss out like how you were feeling before you brought that to your doctor's attention? Because I feel like it's a scary thing to be like,
Mm.
this isn't working. And I don't know if there's another option, but I know that this one is not for me.
Oh, it took me years. It took me years to finally like speak up and say this drug like and it started off first with like, oral medications where I would take them for 3 years. No, and I didn't notice a difference and they would just make me
Mm,
really sleepy. And then finally, and some of it came from them saying, and how are you doing on those? And I would say, I guess I'm okay. Like, I don't know, like, am I supposed to be feeling something different than what I'm feeling now? But the thing that pushed me over was I received this nerve block, and the nerve block was extremely like it wasn't painful going in, or was it? See, I have like blurry memories because like it was such a traumatic experience. When I
mm,
got the nerve block, and it's a long needle that they like put in the back on against your trigeminal nerve. And it's supposed to
stays
like
there?
numb. It's huh?
Does it stay there?
No, 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 no.
Oh,
It's
it's
like an
just
injection. Yeah.
okay.
Um, and it's supposed to like numb your, which it did. It numbed my head. My head felt great. I was like, this is amazing. But it was only a temporary, like I think it wore off after an hour, which then all the pain came back. And for some people it works. And I'm not like I'm not saying don't do nerve blocks, don't do but for me, I've been like the treatments. I think the kind of migraine attacks that I have are just a lot more complicated and I like to dodge treatment. So for me, it didn't work. And then the next day, I experienced probably some of the most excruciating pain in my lower and upper neck to the point where I couldn't turn it.
Mm.
And that like I didn't see my doctor for like my old doctor for a month. Then she was like, "Oh yeah, that nerve block worked for you, huh?" And I was like, "No, no, it didn't." I said that was probably the most painful side effect I've ever had from it, and I was annoyed that that wasn't something that we had discussed prior to. Like, what are some of the side? And who knows? My side effect could have been one of those rare cases that pops up every 0.002%, but that made me a lot more hesitant about, trying new things. But again, I have pain almost every day. So I got over that quickly. I was like, no, I can't. And I did keep trying new things. Um, but it took me a while. It took me like in that I think I didn't see her for 6 months. And then I went back and she referenced that nerve block. And I said, that's a no-go. That was not a good time. That was awful. I would never like to do that ever again. And then like 6 months later, The old doctor was like, I was having like the really bad periods, like periods of pain again. And she's like, oh, why don't we do a nerve block? And I was like, remember, those didn't work for me. Like it was bad time.
Yeah.
So I had to keep constantly reminding her. And I also like want to acknowledge like like doctors are going through so much. They have a lot on their plates and they have carried us through this pandemic. Like without our doctors, we would not be anywhere. And I'm so amazed and in awe at what they've been through this pandemic. I think so. I don't want this to come across like bad doctors are bad. That's not. I love doctors.
Yes.
I have three amazing doctors right now, and I would not be where I was today without them.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree. Doctors have been through so much. These, like, they haven't gotten any sort of break. I hope that somehow they're taking a vacation at some point. Like, I want to just hand them a coffee every time I see them. But I do think that, you know, while while they have been going through a lot and while they have an excess amount of patients, they're just like, I just feel like it can be solved if you just bring on more doctors that are people of color, that are,
Mhm.
trans, biracial, there's so many people that I feel like want to be in this position, but yet the funnel is so tiny at the top. Like they're
Yes.
not letting enough people in. And, maybe this pandemic will help that and like get more people in there. I hope that that's the case.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Right. Um, so you and your boss, Joe Coe, started a
Yes.
podcast. So you,
So Joe actually started the podcast
podcast. Okay.
before I even joined GHLF. He's an amazing person. He also lives with migraine and he started this podcast called Talking Head Pain and he gets to speak with some pretty amazing people around the world living with migraine. Every episode is a different patient story talking about maybe their worst migraine attack, how they live with it, how it's affected their relationships, how it's affected work. And what I really love about this podcast is that it's stories of people who you don't normally hear from. And that's what I really love about it. And Joe asked me prior to joining GHLF, do you want to be a guest? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, and my whole episode was about, the different like the being a queer Black woman and like living the world that way and trying to get treatment and certain situations that have come up, with bringing my partner to doctor's appointments and getting like weird looks like, who's this, your sister? Um,
Oh my gosh.
so yeah, no, it's a great podcast. You can check that out at talkingheadpain.org. And listen, we're going to be dropping season 2 soon and I'm really excited for season 2. There is some really, I mean, season 1 is great, but like I'm always excited for like the next season of something, so like keep your ears out on talkingheadpain.org.
So cool. I love that you're doing that too. And I think that bringing, because not everyone has, or does everyone have a chronic migraine on the podcast?
No, there are a few people who have cluster headache, which it's been dubbed the suicide headache,
Oh my gosh.
meaning like it gets so bad to the point where people have committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And I've never experienced a cluster headache. I do know a few people that do deal with cluster headaches and they are awful. There's an episode. I don't know if we do 1 or 2 episodes on cluster headache in the podcast. Um, so you can like
Wow.
listen to hear his name is Joe. Joe interviews Joe. Joe talks about living with cluster headache and what it feels like and the different barriers to get even treatment for that was like for him.
Wow. I had no idea that there were multiple kinds. I mean, I did interview someone that had hemiplegic migraines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was the first time I thought like, wow, there's this different kind of migraine. But then you opened my eyes to how many different kinds of migraine there are.
There's so many. There's vestibular, there's hemiplegic, there's um, cluster headache, chronic migraine, chronic intractable migraine. There's so many different kinds, and not enough doctors are accessible to patients getting them. A lot of times there's only five. So I see a headache specialist. There's only 500 headache specialists in the United States. And that's such a small number.
Yeah.
For the number of people in the US living with migraine is somewhere over some big number over a million. I don't
Wow.
know if it's 5 million people living with migraine. And put that number to 500 headache specialists, and it's not good. So we going back to your point where you were talking about we need more, doctors. We need more neurologists that are specialized in headache. We need more headache specialists. We need more primary care doctors that know what migraine is and that it's different than a headache. Because for me, that's where I first went to get not a diagnosis, but I was trying to understand what was going on. I didn't know it was a migraine. And they just kept saying it was stress, it was anxiety, I was working too much. They thought maybe I had a stroke. They did a scan, they couldn't find anything. So they sent me home because they didn't have in the back of their head that possibly this could be migraine. And we need, for so many communities, the primary care doctors are the first point of contact for a lot of people, and urgent cares. So many people go to the ER for migraine
Mm.
that not a lot of people realize. And my ERs are the worst place for when you have a migraine attack. It's really loud. There's, constant noise. The lights are always on. Like,
Hmm.
I've been to the ER once for migraine and I will never ever go back. It was not 0 stars.
Would not suggest. Do not go. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. The hospital fluorescent lighting could definitely use an upgrade, but I get that it has to be a certain light, I'm sure. But there should be a separate floor for migraines.
Yeah, there should be. There really should be. There should be a separate floor, a separate wing, a separate everything.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm adding it to my wish list.
Right. We have a lot of wish list points here. I love this though. And I think it's so cool that you're advocating for like most of this. I mean, maybe not a separate wing, but that could be added. Um,
I'll bring it up next work meeting.
But that's so cool. And I think that it's really inspiring that you're like putting action behind the things that are wrong. Because once you're in this position for a long amount of time, you see all of these holes that you're like, this should be fixed. Like, this should be better. So I think
No,
that's
and I never want I also like acknowledge my privilege. Like I have healthcare, I have insurance, I have access to really amazing doctors now. And I want that for everybody. I don't want people to have to live with a condition for 15, 20, 30 years and not get treatment for it. I don't want anybody to have to suffer. It's not right. And the the disparities are there for people from marginalized communities. And it's going to take a group effort for all of us to help bridge, like rebuild the bridge to make sure that they're getting the same treatment as, you know, I want us all to have top tier 5-star services everywhere. I want every single person to have that in healthcare.
yes, absolutely. So after living with this condition for so long, do you find that you can still be positive in life?
I think in the beginning it was a struggle because there's like a grieving process that you have, like when you get a chronic condition and you realizing the things that you now have to adjust or change to readjust to your like quote unquote new life. So in the beginning it was really difficult. Like I would say year 1 or 2 into my chronic disease diagnosis, where I'm like, oh, okay, I can't stay out super late anymore, or I can't like hang out with my friends. I can't drive to go see them because I'm gonna get a migraine attack on the way there. But now, like in the work that I'm doing and the community that is has kind of like come up and surrounded me and supported me, like I find hope and positivity, at least if not once but twice in every day. I think it's changing. I think, you know, if I can just connect with one person to like help share their story, that's a win for me. And that's really all that matters is, we all are working together for one common goal, which is to help make patients' lives easier. and give them the tools that they need to succeed, or at least make them feel less alone. And that's what this has done for me.
So cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I love following this and I can't wait to see what you do next with this. I think it's really cool, Sarah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me the platform to speak so freely about it and for providing a space. Not a lot of people do this, so I appreciate your journey and where you've been, and we're here to support each other.
Thank you. Seriously, so cool. Yay.
Yay.
Yay, changing everything about the healthcare system.
Take it down. No, rebuild it. Rebuild it.
Yeah. Seriously, I wish it was that easy to just rebuild the healthcare system. Just saying a whole bunch of things that you wish that could change, and then it just happens magically. But the magic is actually Sarah, because she is taking her time and she is taking her livelihood and putting it into the Global Healthy Living Foundation and using that as a vehicle to put in front of representatives, taking migraine advocacy and bringing it to the table and making it so that the people that are living with this after us are not experiencing the same disparities or problems that we're facing now. And for that, Sarah, you're really freaking cool. So thank you so much for jumping on this call. I hope that everyone really enjoyed it. I know I did. And I hope that if you enjoyed it enough, you will like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and that you share this episode with a friend that you think that might help them in any sort of way. Come back in the next couple of weeks and we'll have another episode for you that you can listen in to someone else's experience living with chronic illness and or disabilities. Thank you for tuning in, and stay sick, friends. You're doing great.